This is the Mid-America PTTC podcast, where we believe prevention is better together, and together we are stronger. I'm your host, Steve Miller. This is episode 55, and in today's podcast, I have the pleasure of speaking with Missouri State Senator Holly Thompson-Rehder. In addition to being known as a voice in the fight against opioid addiction and the stigma of mental illness, she's also the author of a memoir entitled Cinder Girl, Growing Up on America's Fringe. Holly has lived experience from being raised on welfare, quitting school at 15, becoming a mother at 16, and ultimately deciding to do things differently. Before we get into the content, we would like to thank our funder, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Quick note, although funded by SAMHSA, the content of this recording does not necessarily reflect the views of SAMHSA. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started. Well, welcome to our podcast, Senator Holly Thompson-Rehder. Mind if I just refer to you as Holly?
Please do, and thank you for having me on.
I've been so excited. I told you that before we got on that I just felt like I was giddy about this because I had heard about the release of your memoir, and it was all just kind of coming together really fast. And I was like, I was really surprised that we'd be able to connect this quickly. So thank you so much for taking the time.
You reached out really quick right after we announced it. Right after the first article, you reached out really quick. So I was excited to get you on the schedule right away. Working with ACT Missouri, my very first year in office, I got connected with ACT Missouri. So you guys are near and dear to my heart.
Well, here's the thing. I pretty much laid everything out just in that brief intro. I mean, there's a whole lot more to Holly than that. But the things that I'd like to cover ground on today start with prevention. And you have been a voice for not only prevention of substances, but also in the realm of mental health. So my question is how did you kind of find that path into really being a voice for prevention?
I was raised around drug addiction, and that was a normal life for me. My mother was not an addict. Now, she had a lot of prescription medication because she dealt with mental illness. But in the trailer parks that we grew up in, it was very present. My sister became an addict by the time she was 16, and she married her 30-something-year-old dealer at that time. My cousin died at 39 from long-term opioid abuse. I raised my children very differently. I raised my children in church multiple times a week, and me being the youth leader and Sunday school teacher and all the things. But yet my daughter became an addict at 17, and we went through, 13 years of deep addiction, shooting up, meth, bath salts. My grandson being born with opioids in his system, and then me later having to take custody of him right before he turned 2. So that also happened to be the same year that I had decided to run for office. And, I had different people tell me, Holly, are you really wanting to do this? Because, that's the kind of thing that people love to talk about. But the thing about me is that I've never ran for office or decided to be in office for myself or to have a title or, mama will always be my favorite title. But to help others who grew up like me to know that there's a way out, I got out and I want to help others to do the same. And so it really just the path of helping, recovery and helping mental illness, helping those dealing with domestic violence, all of those things just kind of really found me in the legislature, because as others would have bills or talk about them that first year, I would see so much missing from the conversation, and I would stand up on the floor and just tell my story and tell my truth. And people started seeing it from the eyes of someone who's been there, not so much from theory. And I think that really helps, but that really put upon me the importance of having someone with my type of experience to be the one pushing and helping get policies passed that are going to help those who are struggling with mental health issues or who are caught in domestic violence or, when it comes to addiction, who understand it and know that, no one sets out to be a drug addict. That happens. You don't, no high schooler, when I go and speak in the schools and I say, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Not one of them raises their hand and says a drug addict, right? Because that's
Right.
not what you're trying to do. But yet for years, folks who were addicted were looked at poorly. And all of that just kind of found me. And I know it's a long answer to a simple question, but that's how I kind of became the voice in the Missouri legislature.
Well, it's always an interesting question that I find there's kind of two people, and one would be similar to yourself that has this notion of how destructive it is and wants to do something positive to try and prevent it or to help those that are caught up in the addiction or the other issues that you've addressed. The other is just almost seems like quite by accident, they didn't even know prevention existed. And then once they found out about it, they kind of were like, well, this is a great fit for me because they just had a heart for it. And I think that both of those people really just are individuals that have a heart for really want to make a difference for other people. So one of the things that I first knew about you, and we met several years ago when you were addressing this, and I wondered if you might talk a little bit about the path to Missouri finally getting a PDMP process in our state, because that was a long, hard fought battle that it seemed like you were the one that carried the torch for that for a number of years before we saw any real movement.
Yeah, we passed it on my 9th year in office. So I tell you, that was one of the things I found out when I was running for office and my daughter went yet to another rehab facility and I got my grandson, was that Missouri was the only state that didn't have this important tool. And so I instantly, the minute I was elected, offered up my help with who had filed the bill at that time, which was Representative Engler. And so then I found out, that it had actually been carried for years before that and just never could get it passed. Now, I am tenacious, and that's just a part of who I am. I don't give up on things. If something needs to be done, I'm just going to stay in there, And I was told that it would never pass in Missouri, and it was a lot of work, but it was necessary work. And in the years of me praying and wishing that God would push this thing on through and help people to understand that this is no different than electronic medical records, right? And no one has filed a bill to get rid of electronic medical records. Well, no, that's ridiculous. I mean, that's all this is. And, but it gives our physicians the access that they need to know what their patients have been on so that they can truly address addiction in the doctor's office with their patient, not 2 years down the road when it's too late. So in my prayer and thought process and all of this, I really do feel like the time that it took and the extra fight and how passionate it was on both sides of the issue and how much media really covered it, because it wasn't, and not to downplay a Democrat-Republican fight, because those are always, can get pretty wild too. But to have that type of passion butting heads within a party, I think made it much more interesting when it came to media picking it up. But the ripple effect of that was that more Missourians were becoming educated on what addiction was and what addiction wasn't. And so I think even though it took us a long time, I think more was accomplished with that time frame because of the media attention that it got.
That's a very positive spin on it. I kind of like that. It was because it did generate a lot of awareness, and that's always a positive thing. So you've had some success, navigating that. Kind of where are you today in your role in government leadership? What's the focus that you're really championing for now?
I've been working a lot on syringe access programs. In Missouri, we have some syringe access programs working. Now, these are harm reduction programs. A lot of folks don't know that in Missouri, we have 13 counties that are on the CDC's watch list for HIV and Hep C outbreaks. So syringe access programs are the number one harm reduction program to help lower the spread of communicable diseases. But it also is folks who use syringe access programs in their substance use also are 4 times more likely to get into treatment and have successful outcome once they get out of treatment. And President Trump even recognized this and had syringe access programs as his number one on the harm reduction plan when he was in office. So it's not a Democrat or a Republican thing. This is a public health issue. And so I've really been trying to get it passed in Missouri to where right now it's a paraphernalia charge. So we have a couple of them working, one that's been working 30 years. But the local law enforcement look the other way because they are so instrumental. And but in Missouri, with our laws, you could get charged with paraphernalia for giving out that clean needle. Now you can buy needles on Amazon, at Walmart. That's not what it's about. It's about that point-to-point contact. It's about meeting someone where they're at in life. And then that person, when they do get ready to get clean, and everyone does hit that spot, they have someone in their orbit that then they can go to that knows how to get them plugged in. And that's what it's about, So that's one of the things that I've been working on since PDMP passed. But then also, getting more funding for our long-term recovery plans. A lot of folks don't know that there's a big difference between treatment and recovery. Treatment, you go into treatment and you get your body clean and you start getting healthy. But your brain pathways, depending on how long you've been on the drug of your choice, your brain pathways are different. And it takes a while to get your brain healed, and your brain does heal itself. My daughter was right about that 2-year mark when I heard her belly laugh for the first time again, since she was 17. And so it takes a really long time, but you have to have that recovery community to help you walk that out. And if we as a state are helping with treatment, then you're really still in that poverty, then you're really still in that cycle of drug addiction. And, you go treatment, recovery, your 30-day programs, your 60-day programs, then back into that same area that you have been, you get triggered and you start using again. And a lot of times, it's the memories and the things that you did while you were using that you can't live with yourself. And it makes you use again to try to ease that pain of what you've done. When really you just need that recovery community to tell you, hey, we're all going through that, but it gets better. That's in your past. People do forgive. You get second chances, and to really help you manage those triggers, because the triggers are going to come. And so without the funding in our recovery programs, you're really missing a critical link, and you're keeping that cycle going.
Well, I applaud you for the efforts on both those fronts. I obviously am invested in the prevention aspect as well, and have been for a number of years in my own personal recovery. So, it's always welcoming to hear that there are people making decisions and trying to find better ways to reach the audiences that need support. And it's obvious to me, and it may be to our audience as well, but the passion around the PDMP, around access to safe needle use, those kinds of things, kind of is born out of who you are, and that's reflected in your memoir. And I'm excited for you to tell us just a little bit about how, maybe tell us a little bit about how that kind of came about. First of all, like, how did you decide to finally put this story on paper? And then we can talk a little bit about what the reader would find once they got into the book.
Yeah. So, I'm a writer. I love to write, and that's just something that I've always done. But through my years working in the corporate world, when different folks would talk about, their first dating experience, or their this or their that, and I'd talk about mine, everybody's like, oh my gosh, you need to write a book, because my experiences growing up are just different. When my mother struggled with mental illness, and when things would go south, we'd hop a Greyhound and we'd travel to the next place. I've lived from California to Florida, and I've had different, my background is just different, and so I've always had people say, oh my gosh, you need to write a book. And several years ago, I started writing a book. I really felt the Lord was pressing it upon my heart. And I started writing it. And then I Googled and started reading about how to pitch my book idea, and then did that for about a year as I was still writing. I talked to my political consultant about it, and he really liked the idea too. And so he helped me in pitching it also. And he actually is the one that got us a publisher, that found a publisher. And it was the first one he pitched it to. And, and they were very kind, and they said, look, because I just sent a portion, because I only had a portion of it written. And I had the outline, and I had all of the things, and was actively writing it. But they're like, we really like this. We like that we have a very conservative legislator who is actively working on these issues that affect so many without regard to party, but then also because you've actually lived through it. So you're telling your experiences. And so it's not a political book really at all, but in it, I tell how I got to where we were living in trailer parks and staying with family and friends when we didn't have a home, and moving, and all the mama's boyfriends, and managing a mother with mental illness, and having two sisters, one who became an addict. And so it dealing with mama's boyfriends that, one beat her frequently and without mercy, and just all of those things. It's very rigid. It's very real. I don't sugarcoat things, but I want people who grew up like me to realize there's hope, there's a way out, and God was what opened doors for me. When I look at the difference between me and those who grew up with me or like me, the only difference is that I clung to God, and I was obedient to Him, and made Him the primary source of my life. And I had to cling to Him as a child, but I just didn't let go. And And that is offering that type of hope and realization that your past does not define you. What other people have done does not define you. You get to define your future. Is so incredibly important to me. But then also as a legislator, I want people who have the power to make true change to realize that they have the power to make true change and to care about that and not be so, you don't know what you don't know. And so I wanted to give a real true picture of what so many of us, we're jaded. We grew up differently. You can't have government programs that assume, kind of try to mash you into that normal box when your life, that's not your life. And so those things don't work. I watched, so many women who government programs that were actually made because of people's compassion, right? They put these programs together because of compassion, but they absolutely prevented intelligent women from ever rising to their potential. So there's just, in this memoir, I just try to give a true picture of what it's like on the other side of the tracks, and then the power of forgiveness.
Well, I'm sure that it's a compelling read, and I've told you that I'm looking forward to delving into it. I do have a question because you had siblings that one obviously struggled, and you made a decision to do something differently with your life. Can you talk a little bit about? Was there a deciding moment? Was there an incident? Is that part of the book and you don't want to reveal it? But I'm curious, how did you just decide that life doesn't have to be like this?
Yeah. So, we were in a really bad car accident, and my mother died 4 times on the way to being flown to St. Louis. The last time they turned the helicopter around, they said, but she came back, and each time her heart came back, and she recovered, but I had to quit school to help take care of her and my little sister. And so I was 15. I had just started the 10th grade, and we had that car accident. And so I had to quit school to help take care of her. Well, I got married at 15 right after that. And the car accident wasn't why I got married. I had already decided I was getting out. I was done with that life. I needed to be making my own decisions. So right after the car accident, I quit school to help take care of my mom and little sister. I got married. Within 4 months, I was pregnant. I had my daughter at 16. And I'm like, I literally have a human that depends on me for everything but breath, And I cannot give her this same life that I have. She's counting on me to do it better, and I have to. And so I put my head down and I worked, and I went to church, and I did my best to obey God, and I worked, and I took whatever jobs I could find. I was a hotel maid, worked in cafes. I did whatever, a nanny job. I did whatever. And, I took GED classes nights and on the weekends, and I got my GED a few years later. And then it took me 17 years to get my college degree because I did it while working full time and, raising babies. But it was important to me. But that was my moment, was knowing that all the things that I hated about my life how could I turn around and subject her to that?
Yeah, that's a powerful story, and it's one that bears repeating because it doesn't happen overnight. You really had to find your way out of the wilderness, so to speak, and figure out how to have the life that you enjoy today.
And there were so many times, so many nights that that I lay in bed crying as a teenager because my friends were out partying and having fun, and here I'm laying in a little trailer by myself with my baby. Something I did to myself. I took full responsibility for it. But I had to make that decision that I'm not going to have fun now because I've got to provide a better way for her. I've got to provide a better life for her. And my mama, she wasn't shy about, you made your bed, you're going to lay in it. I mean, she didn't help me. She had her own things going. And I'm thankful for that now. Man, I hated it then. But I'm thankful for that now because that's a lot of who made me who I am, the strong person that I am. But it wasn't easy. And there is nothing fun about being 15 and pregnant and all your friends are at the swimming pool in their bikinis and everything else. It really stunk.
But it made you who you are, and I guess that's the important part. And you've made a difference for a lot of people along the way. So you did mention, how is your daughter doing now?
She's so fantastic. She is the best mama I know. She has been in recovery for 8 years, and she's just amazing. It was right about that 2-year mark. Like I said, I heard her belly laugh again, and she hasn't stopped since. She's just strong. She's the person that I always knew that she was. She just needed to give her brain time to heal. And she needed to get in a long-term recovery program that could help her understand the mental health side of addiction, because you can't just get your body clean. You can't just get your system clean of the drugs. You have to spend time on the mental health side, on understanding the triggers. And there's a chapter in the book about that. And she wouldn't mind me telling this because she actually asked me to include it in the chapter that I wrote about this. But she had to take medicine for schizophrenia after she got clean. And they had told her it was drug-induced schizophrenia. And that really scared her. It really scared her, one, the voices that she was hearing as she was off the drugs, but it also scared her thinking, this is going to be my life forever. But it wasn't. It was about a year on that medication, and she was able to come off of it, that she didn't have that anymore. Her brain was healing. And, our brain does repair itself, but you have to give it time. And the depression that you go through, when you're finally, your system is free of the medications, that lasts a long time too. And it's very dark, but you need to be plugged into a place that's telling you this is temporary. Things aren't as dark as they feel, but I do get it that you feel like there's no hope in sight, because that is how you feel. You wake up just not wanting to ever climb out of the bed. And, but all of those things, she was glad that, she wanted me to put that in the book, because her journey has been a long one. But man, she's a powerful person.
Well, good for her, and good for you as well. So I guess a question that I have is that you've found a life in public service and have accomplished a number of significant inroads in that capacity. You now have a memoir And so my question would be, so what's next for Holly Rehder?
I don't know. I've always been someone, certainly me being in politics shows this, but I've always been someone that has just wanted to do whatever God has for me. And when he opens doors, I check them out. And, I love being a voice for my people, the people who grew up like me. I love being able to give a better understanding of what some of us experience and why some of us think differently. And I hope to be able to do that more on a national level, because I do think that my story is unique in a lot of ways. Unique because not unique as in, my goodness, there were so many people who grew up like me that had it a lot worse than me, that went through so much more than I ever had to go through. But the fact that God has opened a door and put me in politics, which is wild as can be, because I'm about as normal as anyone. But unique that I have a platform that I can be helpful to others, and that I can explain these things out of love and knowledge that not everyone understands them. And sometimes it takes time for folks to come around, and I'm not a person who gives up. So I'm hoping to make more of a difference in this area nationally, maybe.
So the book is Cinder Girl, Growing Up on America's Fringe, and it's available August the 9th of 2022.
Right.
Is there a website or a place where people that are listening, they might learn more about you that maybe coincides with the book? Or
Yes. So Post Hill Press is the publishing company, and then Amazon has pre-orders already going for it for Cinder Girl. And if you Google Holly Thompson-Rehder and Cinder Girl, you will have that. And then we do have, I do a blog, Politics and Pearls. And so on my blog, I have information that'll be going up today also on the book. And then also on my Facebook, of course, I put information about the book as well.
Okay, well, we can list those contact points in the show notes so people will have easy access to them. So is there one parting thought or one point of wisdom that you would like to leave the audience, call to action, anything that it's your chance to have the platform for yourself?
If you're struggling with addiction, don't give up. Don't think that you're never going to get out of it, because you will. But it does take trying different things. Unfortunately, it's not a one size fits all. And reach out for help. We have, starting on July 17th, I believe, we have the new national 988, which is a crisis hotline. And so use it. Those are going to have people who are trained in dealing with crisis on the other end of the line to be able to help get you plugged in where you need to be. And so if one treatment program or one recovery program is not the fit for you, then go try another one. But there is life outside of addiction, and you can find it. You just have to keep searching.
Thank you, Holly. I appreciated the time together and the conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you reaching out to me and wanting to do this. I really do.
Thank you for listening to this Mid-America PTTC podcast. To learn more about any upcoming trainings, visit pttcnetwork.org and look under your PTTC for the Mid-America link. Remember, prevention is better together, and together we are stronger.